In this video, I want to describe a popular quantitative approach, conjoint analysis or trade-off analysis, for getting customer input for product design. The key idea is that rather than asking customers directly, we infer their preferences from hypothetical choices they make. Directly asking customers about their preferences often leads to unenlightening answers. For example, what features would you like to see in a new smartphone? Well, everything that's available, of course. Or what would you like to pay for that smartphone? Well, as little as possible. If asked directly, customers often say they want everything and pay almost nothing. This, of course, is impossible, so we need another way to ask them. The idea behind conjoint analysis or trade-off analysis is that customers can't or won't accurately tell us their preferences, so instead we infer their preferences from choices they make. Here are some examples. Courtyard by Marriott. It debuted with the slogan, "Designed by business travelers for business travelers." People sometimes have trouble articulating their preferences. An easier task can be just to have them make choices. You can't just build a new hotel concept and see if it'll work. You need to get it right the first time. So they had a bunch of business travelers make choices from descriptions of hotels. A lot of their innovations have been competed away, but they were the first to recognize things like travelers were paying an extra $5 per night for the Marriott name. They didn't want to pay for one of those big marble lobbies. And things like an iron and ironing board in the room and 2 sinks in the bathroom add a lot of value. Sometimes customers aren't honest with us when we ask them directly. A couple of times in my life, my wife and I have bought real estate, the family home. How does that process work? Well, you find an agent, tell the agent your preferences, and then the agent looks for homes to show you that match those preferences. But if you're not honest with the agent, they can't show you homes that match your preferences. We have 3 boys, so a flat driveway is something that is very important to me for playing things like basketball. But if I rejected a perfectly good home because the driveway wasn't flat, my wife would kill me. So I'll comment, "Did you see the mold in the bathroom?" "What mold?" And same with my wife. She's always looking at that second bedroom way too closely. Both her parents are still alive, but I'm waiting for the day she suggests one will move in with us. There's a real estate agency in Southern California. You walk in and they ask, "Would you mind answering a few questions?" You sit in front of a computer terminal and they show you pairs of homes. Which do you like? A or B? A or C? F or G? What they're doing is a conjoint analysis where they collect the data as pairwise choices. After you're done, you grab a cup of coffee while the computer chugs away calculating your preferences and then goes into the database of homes to find homes that closely match your preferences. They have a quasi-experiment because some agents use the system and some do not. Those that do, and here I can't recall the exact value, take, say, 5 showings before they get an offer, and those that don't use the system take, say, 8 showings. In the early to mid-2010s, Apple sued Samsung for alleged patent infringements that relate to features of the iPhone and iPad. Conjoint analysis was used to determine the damages. A feature like slide to unlock is just another attribute that can be used to describe a smart device, and thus it can be valued using conjoint analysis. Finally, Pandora. While this isn't conjoint analysis because the product set the customer is choosing from isn't an experimental design, the underlying idea is the same. There are 2 broad ways to make recommendations. One is to make recommendations to me based on what others who the recommender system views as like me are listening to. That's not how Pandora works. How Pandora works is to break music I'm listening to now into components: genre, melody, rhythm, vocals, and lyrics. It views what I'm listening to now as a bundle of attributes. It infers my preferences for each attribute based on my listening behavior, looks for other songs based on those inferred preferences, and uses that to make recommendations to me. Conjoint analysis works in products that can be described as a bundle of attributes. Each attribute adds to the overall utility of the product or service, and utility drives choice, i.e. behavior. Conjoint analysis has been used in many practical applications to support product design. Questions such as, Should our health benefit plan include prescription drug coverage, vision benefits, and/or dental benefits? Or should we use a steel or aluminum casing to increase customer preference for our new extrusion equipment? Conjoint analysis requires that the product or service can be decomposed into attributes, and respondents can agree on what those attributes mean. It helps if the attributes are engineering specifications. For example, a smartphone can be described by its screen size, battery life, brand name, camera pixels, etc. Hedonic goods and abstract attributes pose challenges. Consider perfume. Smells floral might describe its scent, but it is not clear that all consumers would define smells floral the same way. This can make it difficult for the conjoint study to inform the product design, though you can get around this by having the respondent rate prototypes rather than descriptions of the product. How does conjoint analysis work? Respondents rate or choose from a set of 20 to 30 hypothetical products. The analyst then uses the responses to infer individual level preferences for each attribute level. It is important to note that we get preferences for an individual, which can then be aggregated to the market level. Step 1. Define the attributes. It is important that these are the most important determinants of choice. Earlier we discussed how Apple used conjoint analysis to value features such as slide to unlock in order to determine damages from Samsung for patent infringement. Samsung did not dispute using conjoint analysis to determine the damages, but challenged that Apple's study, by neglecting brand name, overstated the value of the features in dispute. Generally, we aim for no more than 6 attributes. It becomes burdensome on the respondent if there are too many attributes. We use qualitative methods to determine the important attributes. For example, a restaurant-style pizza might be described by its toppings, the amount of cheese, the crust, and the price. Step 2. Define the levels. There are several considerations. First, the levels should not be ambiguous. Don't say something like long battery life. Specify the battery life in concrete terms. Second, do not use ranges. Don't say something like battery life is 10 to 20 hours. Instead, use a specific value. You can interpolate later. Third, the levels should be realistic values that could occur in the market. Extremes that are not feasible tend to get overvalued by respondents. Finally, watch having too many levels for an attribute. You can always interpolate later as needed. Back to the pizza example. Although the qualitative work determined that toppings was an important attribute, defining each possible topping as a separate attribute will make the choice task very difficult for respondents. There are over 30 distinct attribute levels and over 50,000 possible products that could be created from the attributes shown here. To make it feasible for a conjoint analysis study, we collapse toppings into a succinct number of attributes. Here we collapse them into 2 attributes, meat and veggie, allowing only one choice for each, and collapsing less popular choices into a catch-all level called Other. Step 3. Determine the products to show respondents. Instead of showing a respondent all possible products that could be created from the conjoint design, we show them a cleverly selected subset based on the assumption that the attributes are independent. What does independent mean? It means that your preference for, say, the amount of cheese does not depend on what crust was used for the pizza. Because determining the products to show respondents is needed for every conjoint study, there are tables we can refer to, some that were created decades ago. The formal name for this is an experimental design. Step 4. Collect the data. Today this is done using interviewing software. Aim for a few hundred respondents. The data is usually collected in one of 2 ways. One way, called full profile, has respondents provide a rating on, say, a 0 to 100 scale for each product they are shown. The other dominant way to collect the data is to present the respondent with a series of 2 or 3 products, asking them to choose from the set. A limitation of conjoint analysis is that it assumes things do not change. The attributes used remain the most important attributes. The competitors stay the same and don't change their product features. Finally, There are many applications of conjoint analysis in practice, ranging from segmentation studies to product design studies to pricing studies. In summary, asking customers directly about their preferences often leads to unenlightening answers. They want everything and to pay very little. Conjoint analysis is a method to elicit customer preferences inferentially by having them make choices of hypothetical products. If you conduct conjoint analysis studies regularly, say as part of a consulting practice, consider using commercial software from a firm called Sawtooth Software. This concludes this video.